Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Tiffany Brunson. How are you doing this morning?
I'm fantastic. I'm doing well, and I'm really happy to be here.
Good morning. Yeah, we're so excited to have you. I've been looking forward to this. I can't wait for you, to share your experiences and such. So thank you and welcome this morning or afternoon. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Right. All right. Well, yeah, it's great having you on board today. Let's get started. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey so far?
Yeah, so far, you're asking, I'll be very brief as it relates to a 30-year career. This is year 30, and all in education. But I
Mm-hmm.
started, of course, as a young teacher. I was as they now call it, a teacher of diverse learners. We have gotten much better with our terminology and language. Progress is great. But I started off as a special education teacher in Chicago. I'm born and raised in Chicago. And I taught students that at that time would have been considered mentally handicapped or students with very low IQs. And that is, I'm so glad that we have now changed all of our terminology. But
Mm-hmm.
now I was a teacher of diverse learners. I started there, and I've also taught students with various special needs. I used to sign language, used to use sign language. I used to teach children self, taking care, like self skills, like being able to take care of themselves, to
Mm-hmm.
accept children with all kinds of exceptionalities, if you will. And so I did that for 13 years, and then I moved on to become a special education teacher. I'm sorry, moved from being a special education teacher to then becoming an assistant principal, and then
Mm-hmm.
principal, and then after that, all Chicago as well as in Forest Park, which is a suburb of Chicago. And I absolutely love that job. I was there for a very long time. I love that community, and then I went on to become the Rockford's first Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer, and then went on to now in my current role as the proud superintendent of Elementary School District 159, which is in a suburb right outside of Chicago as well. And so that is my educational journey in a nutshell. But it's been a complex journey. It has not been a straight line. It has been a winding road, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And 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 I've been in educational leadership for a very long time, and so it is definitely, as John Maxwell calls it, being. I have become a developer of people, and
Oh,
that's really important to me. And so I'm really excited to talk about that.
absolutely. And what a
Oh, that's great.
wonderful
Yeah, I love that
journey.
mindset.
Yeah, well, I love the journey. Yeah, I mean, you've experienced it all the way up to the top. So I think you bring a lot of expertise with you with that as well. So yeah, congratulations on where you are now because that's wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yep, this is my third year as the superintendent here, and it's been amazing. As you can imagine, it is a very some people say difficult. I just say it's a challenging and complex role to be in at this time,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because education has changed so much, and I think the role of educational leaders, it has evolved, and I think we're at a really great place. So,
wonderful.
I really like that you said developer of people.
Me
mhm.
too.
That's so important, and I really like the mindset behind that. That's a, great stance to take as a leader, looking at, more of the transformative leadership
Hmm.
side, and it's so
Hmm.
important. So that's great. So, what of your personal qualities do you think have made the biggest impact on your success as a leader?
I would say one of my, as I like to call it, my superpower. I think everyone has a superpower, by the way.
Mhm.
But I think my greatest superpower is my ability to listen. I'm very deeply empathetic and very patient, very, very patient. I think when mistakes are made or when missteps are made or things like that, because that's just being human, I have a way of creating the space for people to show up as their authentic selves. And it's not performative. It is just, come as you are, because I think we all have talents and gifts. And my other, like I would say, one of my other superpowers is being able to recognize and respect people's assets and the talents and gifts that they bring to our organization, to our world, and just to each other's lives. And so that to me, for me, are some of my greatest assets, if you will, as a leader.
Oh, well, yeah, I love that. Yeah, that sounds, a lot about what we talk about. In one of our latest books, we talk about the role of compassion in
Mhm.
leadership, and it's so important. And, that really leads to those relationships. So that's perfect.
Yeah, and I think the importance of relationships. I think it's really important for everyone to understand just that. Uh, every single day you come into work, our organization, schools are full of people.
Hmm.
Your greatest resource is your human resource, investing in your people. And sometimes the investment in those people is your patience and your compassion and seeing what they add to your organization. It doesn't matter what seat they sit in or what role they play, but really understanding that our organizations are full of diverse, wonderful people, and even challenging experiences gives us the opportunity to learn, from those opportunities. We had a board meeting last night, and I wake up. After board meetings, I take time to reflect on, I guess you want to say the glows and the grows of the meeting. I do this for every meeting
Hmm.
that I'm in. I prepare, but then afterwards I reflect. And I think about, how did I interact with someone? Did I give them enough space to get their thoughts out? Did I allow enough or set the table for enough people to feel like they're included? If there is, I'm not perfect, so if I become frustrated or misunderstand something, I try to decide and really reflect on where was that misunderstanding, or where did that tension come from, or where to lean into whatever discomfort that is, because that comes with the role of being a leader, a lot leaning into a lot of discomfort and understanding tension and actually seeing those as positive.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And, when you talk about developing people, that's what you take in, the not just the person in the role, but the person and what they bring to it. It was interesting. We had, of all places, a guy from Australia was talking about that he's been fortunate to travel to the United States and other places. And he said, it's interesting that we talk about and we do a good job of bringing in diversity. He's like, but then we don't listen to the
Mhm.
diversity, and I was like, that's a good
Hmm.
point. We say,
Mhm.
oh, we have it, but we don't listen to it. We all try to get to the same point too quick instead of listening to the different people, and like you said, kind of sifting through it and understanding it and where they're coming from, and then you're able to really, make a better decision or come to a better conclusion, or understand each other better. So I love that
Mhm.
you do that, and that's the mindset of where you're coming from. And I bet the
Yeah.
people under you appreciate that too.
They
Oh,
do. They
yeah.
do. We call that the rushing up the ladder of influence. inference, right? It's like, because I think in education specifically, um, we try to get to a solution too fast. And sometimes we end up creating more chaos, if you will, by
Mm.
assigning the wrong solution for the problem. Or we don't have the right people in the room to make the decisions that will affect them most. Like in schools, the people that are affected most by the decisions that we make are young people. And oftentimes they're not in the room, or their spirit isn't in the room when we're making decisions.
Mm.
We make the decisions for them because we think, well, I have these degrees, I have this 30 years of experience, I'm the adult, I can make a decision for you. And one of the things that I always talk about is what I call circular or circle leadership, is that the leadership is not about hierarchies, it's a full circle. There's no beginning and there's no end. So there's no one in control. The real control is
Mm.
the situation is actually in control of the situation. you know
I love
Right.
and
Right.
that.
sometimes
Yeah.
Yeah.
when you realize that and you recognize that, you're able to make the right decisions. Because oftentimes we try to assign, we create policies, disciplinary, actions are taken, sweeping judgments are made simply because it's the easiest thing to do. It's kind of like writing an email and CCing all of these people on the email that don't really need to be on the email,
Mm,
because it's the
Mhm.
right.
easiest thing to do, right? It's convenient. And oftentimes what we feel is we don't have enough time. But actually taking the time will save you more headaches, and it will bring people closer when you slow down, pause, and reflect, and then make your decisions. But that's been something I've learned over the years, and people who come to work alongside me, it's a hard thing for them to struggle with. They're like, "So what's the solution? When we get into the solution?" I said, "No." I said, "I want us to really understand what the challenge is, you know, and be able to look at all sides and all perspectives, and then be able to make a sound decision." And sometimes that can be frustrating for people, and I understand that.
Oh, I love that so much. It's kind of like the old saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Everything looks like a nail.
So
That's
you're
that's
right
correct.
on. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that perspective. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That was powerful.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. I don't know. I love how you said at the beginning about leadership being transformational. It is. But oftentimes we have to figure out who we are first
Mm,
as human beings and as
Mm.
people before, because we bring that into our leadership style. And then when you're really, really quick to make decisions, one of the things I try to make sure that when hiring or when we're bringing on new teammates or whatever, is not about whether they fit perfectly, because oftentimes if you try to figure out who fits perfectly, then you just replicate yourself oftentimes, right?
Mm.
Sometimes you need to say, then you just have an echo chamber, and then it's like all of us look the same, like we're all being rolled off of an assembly line, right? That is not good leadership. Good leadership is looking at potential and then giving people the opportunity to grow. Like, what does that
Mm.
really mean?
yes.
But
Yes.
if you already want someone that's perfect and to think just like you, then you actually you don't have other leaders in the room. A real good leader creates more leaders, not more
Mhm.
followers.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Love that.
And I love that, like you said, like, yeah, if you want them to think and act and reach decisions and do everything just like you, what's the point of really having them, if you're just duplicating yourself, and that's not really,
Yeah.
which I guess from the ego standpoint might be okay for some people, but yeah, it's not really helping you reach, you know solve problems and reach the best solution. So that's a great point.
Mhm. It stifles innovation and progress.
Mhm.
Innovation always comes out of risk, taking risks.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and oftentimes leaders, we don't like to relinquish the power, if you will. and we don't like to share in the power, and you and that's when you end up, as as you said, like you're just duplicating, or repeating the same patterns over and over again. And that's why a lot of organizations, especially schools, as we look at all of the issues that are happening in schools, and this is what I think is really critical for us to analyze is, if we're in Illinois, you're in Georgia, if you and I are saying that we're having the same exact issues in two separate states around the same issue, there's something wrong with the the system.
The
And
system,
then,
right?
because the system, there's something wrong with
Mhm.
it. It's the educational system as a whole. If you're having the same issue, I'm having the same issue, then apparently that there's similarities in that. Then it really is that we're not transforming or reimagining our system. We're just replicating
Mhm.
it, duplicating it, repeating the same things over and over again, instead of really digging deep into why are we like after COVID, right? Everyone now says, well, we have an issue with reading. We had an issue with teaching young people how to read prior to that.
Mhm.
you know and we keep we keep assigning the same solutions, if you will, to the same problems over and over and over again, as opposed to trying something different.
Absolutely. Oh, you're so right with that. And I sometimes think maybe it's ease, because you said something a minute ago that I think is really important. You talked about that a lot of times leaders don't like to relinquish control. And so I think part of that is because they, like you in your position, that you're ultimately responsible. And so unless you're very confident in yourself and your leadership, it's hard to relinquish any of that control. So the fact that you're able to do that, speaks volumes of, I'm confident in myself, my leadership ability, what I bring, and I understand that, I need to bring people on that will help even, get us to another level. But I think for some that may be hard. And I think part of that though is because they're like, well, I'm the one ultimately responsible. So, it kind of needs to be my way. And that's, not a very healthy environment. And you sure don't get the best from your staff if you do that either. But that does, I think, take, some confidence in your own leadership to be able to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's kind of going from that hero to host leadership, right? And I think that that is traditionally what people have expected out of leaders, to be fixers, to come in and have all the answers like right away, day one. They give you the keys. They say, this is your office, your name is on the door, and they're like, you're in charge. And I'm like, nope, I'm actually not in charge. I said, who's in charge are the young people that we are serving, but really it's the system that creates, or we either can recreate the system, reimagine the system, or we just keep replicating it. And so we have to really decide. And so that whole thing about going from the hero, just coming in with your cape and saying, I'm here to fix everything, or you can be a host and create these psychologically safe environments, and this where people can fail, or fail up, if you will, or you can create places where there's no progress, there won't be any progress. And so that host leadership, because what do we like about hosts, right? Hosts make you feel, when you come to their home, they have asked who's vegan, who's vegetarian, who likes this, who likes that. They try to make sure that the environment is conducive to your enjoyment, that it is
Mhm.
conducive to you wanting to stay longer,
Right.
or for you even to tell everyone about, oh my gosh, I went to this party and it was amazing, or I stayed at this amazing hotel and the service was this great, or we went to dinner and, oh, our waitress or our waiter were amazing. I want people to say the same thing about when they interact with every single person in my school district. That standards of service. I want them to say, you know what? I want to build a house in that community.
Mm,
I want to move my family there because the experience is so important and so amazing. And that's why I tell people that, they ask what kind of leader are you? I'm a host leader. I want to set the conditions for satisfaction, for happiness, for the ability to be listened to be heard, and those are the places people stay. But I can tell you that it also creates a place where some people leave because there's a misalignment in values, and
Mm.
sometimes that's okay.
Right, and that's okay. Absolutely, absolutely.
So, can you tell us about some of the challenges that you faced throughout your throughout your leadership roles?
Well, they've been very, it depends because it varies because of my intersectionality of my identities. Some of the issues have been because I was female, some have been because I'm black, you know, and so it- I think that it just depends on which challenge. I think it depends on
Hmm.
which situation. I can tell you that this role as a superintendent, because there's 14,000 superintendents in America, roughly. 1% of the 14,000 are African American women.
Yeah.
Hmm. Wow.
Yet, the amount of children that we serve that are African American or children of color, there's a great disparity, right? Like
Hmm.
statistically, it doesn't make sense, right? And so even
Hmm.
in leadership, being a woman in leadership, so I can tell you that there's been a myriad of challenges. It just depends. Even when I became a teacher, I would say one of the challenges, because I was a teacher of diverse learners, and now you're talking about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and we're thinking of like Public Law 94-142, what was that, 1975,
Mhm.
around in that time, when our children weren't even considered to be educated with their non-disabled peers, right? And so I can tell you that 30 years ago, the challenges were equity, but from a different lens and for a different issue, because it was educational equity for me educating children with disabilities. That was a challenge because
Mm.
when I was a teacher, my
Yeah.
room was changed. I had the most undesirable room. I was in a corner. I was like in a basement area. Like it was really, really crazy trying to get my children included to be treated like full humans and fully access the educational experience. That's how I started my career, and that's been my journey
Wow. Yeah.
um ever since. Like, like, hey, these children deserve to have equal access to public education, and their families, empowering their families. So that I can tell you that was one challenge that started 30 years, but it also started my understanding of the inequities of education out the gate.
Hmm.
And so I've been kind of on that journey, and that running down that pathway, if you will, my entire 30-year career.
Oh, wow, wow. So it sounds like you've spent a lot of time advocating for others, and that that takes a lot of compassion, and
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
great that you have that passion. I mean, it's very necessary. There's not a whole lot of people that are standing up, and not a whole lot of people that are speaking out. So the ability for you to use your platform
Yeah, I was going to
is
say, yeah,
priceless.
it's very fortunate, yeah, that you've been able to have that platform, so to be able to do it. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and that's a really eye opener, and I guess most people won't think about that, and I think they'll really enjoy listening. That even 50 years ago, it looks so different, and you've had many battles that most people may not even think about.
Hmm.
That you endured and triumphed. So yeah. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I do. I like to think about that, kind of where I started, and then even, I've had many firsts in my career. One one community I became the principal. I was the first woman and the first Black principal they had. And I was like, oh wow. At the time, I didn't know it when I got hired. I didn't know it until I walked into the building.
Oh,
You
really? Oh,
know, my
yeah.
superintendent was very
Um,
progressive and very open. And it was very eye-opening for me because a lot of my teachers had not had a black leader. You know,
mhm.
they have had colleagues, not a few, but not a black leader. And so it was really, really, really interesting. So I've had, like I said, different challenges along the way. But for me, I just looked at them as more opportunities to educate because I'm empathetic. If you've never had that, then you may have some bias that you didn't even realize that you had until you are
Mhm.
faced with this new situation. And I kind of look at it that way. And now being a superintendent, I have been able to take all of those experiences and bring them with me so that when I am faced with a challenge from someone, I try to say, well, why is this parent angry? Or why is this employee dissatisfied? Like, really, why are they? And is it something that's within my control
Right.
to
Yeah. To
change? Because
change.
sometimes it's not within your control, but you can still be empathetic and understand. And
Mhm.
I think that I have had various opportunities, and so it's created this wealth of knowledge that in me, not only just like academic knowledge, but just kind of really understanding people.
That's amazing, and it shows
Mhm.
even in how you reflect on it.
So, can you tell us about an educator or two that have had the greatest impact on your personal development?
Oh wow. So there's been people from afar, of course, that I have
Mhm.
watched. Brad is one. For people from afar, and I would say that people that, because what I do love about social media is that you get a chance to see people. I do guest speaking and trainings and things like that. And so I get involved with people that you see because you see like this person is really interesting, or they our morals and values align, like you could tell, or people who are passionate about educating young people. So there's a lot of people, but I would say the recently one of the people has been Bettina Love, and this is someone I have had the opportunity to meet her in person, but it's someone that I have read all of her books, and I just kind of really listened to her own journey as a young person to an educator, and I really am impressed by her. I would say though, on a personal note, that it was a former principal. He is now an ancestor, if you will, but I was a young teacher. Gave me my first job, and his name was James Norris, Dr. James Norris. He gave me my first teaching job. And I remember going in for the interview, and he hired me on the spot.
Oh,
And
wow.
Wow.
I went to the University of Illinois, go Illini, and I came home during spring break to interview because that's what you do, right? You're about to graduate in May,
Right.
so
Right.
I had this one week of all of these interviews, and I just remember walking in, and he said, he we went through the interview, and he looked at me and he said, "You're going to do great things one day, but I want it to be here is where you start." Those were his words.
Oh,
Oh.
wow.
And I was there for 6 years. He was the one who encouraged me to go on to pursue and become a principal because he said, you should.
Mm.
He said, you have great leadership. I was always volunteering, can anyone, be the coach of this? I didn't even play golf. I took golf lessons because I wanted to bring golf to the South Side of Chicago for these young children. I took golf lessons, then I brought golf because I wanted our children to have access and opportunities that they didn't have, like those types of things. And he was like, no one would have thought about doing that,
Right.
but you did, like that kind of stuff. And so he was just like, and so I ended up following in his footsteps, becoming a principal. Then I actually got my PhD from Loyola University because he went to Loyola University. It was one of those things,
Oh,
and he
wow.
just was like, thank you. And then when it was time for me to go to then, move on, he was very influential in seeing something in me beyond what I can see myself, as a young 21-year-old teacher, right? And I love that. He right on the spot and he said, "So I want this to be where you start." And I never forget that 6 years of learning so much from him and stayed in touch with him afterwards. But he really poured into me and he challenged me too. We got into some very uncomfortable conversations because I was a firecracker and you know but again, I was the one advocating and fighting for my students and their rights, and and I was a special Olympics coach, like I was really
Yeah.
into it, you know what I mean? And so for me, advocacy meant so much. And I changed, I my classroom went from the basement to we had a prime location at the center of
Love it.
the center of the building. You know what I mean? Because that was important to me.
Exactly.
So yeah.
But that's
I can go
amazing.
on
And
about that.
well, I was going to say, and it's wonderful to have somebody like you said, and a lot of times I share that even with students, teachers a lot of times see something in them that they don't see in themselves yet,
Hmm.
and I think even as adults we're like that, and so it's always wonderful to be able to remember someone or pinpoint someone that did that for us, that saw something in us, because a lot of times we don't think about what strengths and talents we have. We see them in others a lot of times easier and quicker than we see them in ourselves. So to have someone, impact you that way, and help you get to your level, and now think of the number of people that you've impacted that way
Hmm.
because he impacted you. That's what's so beautiful
Yeah.
about that whole story.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. So one of the quick story, one of the things that when I get a chance to get in front of the entire staff, I always try to create an atmosphere of joy and celebration, even if we are going to have a serious conversation or, because the work of what we do, like I tell people, I take my work seriously. I don't take myself seriously. I said, there is a
Yeah,
difference.
right. Yeah.
And so at the end of the year, my closing, I guess you want to say, word for everyone is I went through all of these teacher memes for the year, and we had a ball laughing at them because teacher Twitter or teacher X is hilarious, and the
Right.
memes,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
all. And so my whole presentation was full of memes, teacher
I
memes
love
that
it.
I got off
I
the
love
internet,
it. I love
and
it.
we laughed at ourselves and we laughed at the ridiculous things that children said and things that children did, and the ridiculous interactions you've had with parents and all of the funny stuff, like, and we just had such, the whole auditorium, we were laughing. And then at the end I played a video, and it was about one video that was showing all of these students thanking their teachers. And
Oh,
I said, you have to remember that even as challenging as it is, there's going to be a child who becomes an adult who's going to reflect, and you're going to be their favorite teacher.
that's right.
And it may not be the kid that was your favorite kid.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but it was the kid that came in, they turned every work, all the work in late all the time. They were your most rambunctious, or lively, child that may not have been the one that followed all the rules. But one day when they're asked, they're going to say, you know what? That was my favorite teacher.
Yep. That's
And
right.
they will have a reason why.
Yep.
So I always tell them, just remember that every single interaction matters.
Yes.
They don't forget it. They do not forget those. And so, yeah, so that's what I like to do. We talk serious, but I also like to remind everyone that doing the work that we do and touching the lives that we touch, it is an honor and a privilege to be able to do so.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Because it's not always it's not always joyful.
No, it is. I agree. I think teaching education, it's one of the toughest jobs there is. But the flip side to that is that it's one of the most fulfilling. whether the students tell you or not, like you said, at some
Mhm.
point, somewhere, they're going to reflect on you and the impact that you had on their life. And that's what's just so special and amazing about it. So thank you
I've
for
had so
sharing
many
that.
of them find me on social media. They find you on social media. And they're like, "Do you remember me?" And I'm like, "Of course I do.
Of
You're
course, yeah.
taller. You taller. You got a beard now. That's weird, but yes, but you do, and they find you, and you're like, wow. Because now I'm saying 30 years. Like that's people are they're adults,
Right.
you know, and just remembering our influence and our impact. And I carry that with me, especially the weight of that as a superintendent. Your impact and your influence. But what are you impacting and what are you influencing is
Exactly.
what you have to question.
Yeah. I love it.
So tell us a little bit about your book, Centering Our Voices.
Yeah, so there it is an anthology, and I must say now an award-winning anthology.
All right.
So
Congrats.
international book awards. We received two. We won a finalist award for women's studies, women's issues, and we won an award. We won first place for anthology. You all write books. It's all these different categories, and so it is an anthology of 22 African American women. We're all across the country. We all met and came together via social media, and
Oh,
we were, having conversations about our experiences, our individual experiences. And, Dr. Taryn Givan, she's out of Texas, and she said, we should we should write a book. And she brought together all these very brilliant women. Some are, principals, teachers, educational consultants, professors, and I'm the only superintendent in the book.
Mm,
Statistically,
that's
that's about
right.
right.
Right. Yeah.
So, and so we all share our own experiences as educators. And we also talk about how ourselves as people, and then our belief systems and our passion for this work. And it is so beautifully written, and I love the honesty of the women and how they have shared. This book is for anyone. Like if anyone who cares about education, just anyone who wants to hear and learn about other people's experiences, because that's
Right.
really what it's about.
mhm.
That's what it's about. And it's been a great addition to my life this year, because the book was just published in Women's History Month. Is when we worked hard,
All right.
started in the fall, and we worked hard to get it, written, published, and out for distribution. And by Women's History Month, and we made it, and now it's available,
Awesome. Yeah.
and it's been wonderful.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Congratulations. That's always a big deal. I mean, it's an
Hmm.
accomplishment because I don't know about you, but I always find writing, I enjoy it, but sometimes it's tough work too to sit down and really pour your emotions and everything into it. So, but yeah, we'll definitely post this when we post the podcast with the link to it and everything like that. So everybody
Yeah, thank
can
you,
access it.
thank you. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm with you, Dr. Brad. I love writing. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I want to shout out Mr. McGrath, who was my journalism teacher in high school,
All right.
who who gave me he gave me the confidence for
Mm,
public speaking and for writing,
Mm.
and and really respecting my own voice is what he taught
I
me.
love that.
And I
Yeah.
don't know about the other kids in class. I was a sophomore. I said, I don't know who else is excited, but it was my favorite class,
Oh,
because he
that's
taught
awesome.
us about the history of journalism, and telling stories, and how important the journalism has been to our history as Americans, and around the world, and how we used to be, well,
Mhm.
journalists used to be so important, but now they compete now with social media as well, right?
Mhm.
But the importance of telling a story and keeping an oral history going, and I
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just love that. And so that's why I write, and I love it. I started working on my solo book, and working on that, I do have a title called All the answers are in the room, meaning when you bring
Mhm.
all of your people together, you can solve any problems and the answers are already in the room.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
so I'm
wow.
I'm working on it. The hope is by next spring, but like you said, it's hard sitting down when you have a job that takes up a lot of your time.
Speaking of which, I think his next question will fall on that.
So it sounds like you have a lot going on, a lot in the works, and obviously, give a whole lot of yourself. So how do you take care of yourself?
It's my favorite question because I love how it keeps it top of mind, right? Because people say work life balance. I like to say it's life work balance instead. I have great groups of friends that I work really hard to keep in touch with. Like once a month, I have a group of ladies that we go and we have dinner or brunch. Like it's a standing meeting, and we call it a standing meeting because that's how serious it is. And then as a matter of fact, this weekend I'm leaving to go on a all girls trip. We do one once a year. I mean, we have gone Puerto Rico, Costa Rica. We're going to Jamaica. So every year, and and this is without our children and without our husbands, our spouses, or our other loved ones, if you will. But
Mhm.
so those are the grand things that I do, trips and
Mhm.
things like that or whatever. But the small moments, like this morning, I got up to I take a 4 or 5 minute, 5 mile walk,
Mhm.
and I like to
Oh.
listen to podcasts. I like to
Mhm.
listen to books, Audible, books on Audible,
Mhm.
music. But it's those quiet moments. And I'll tell you this, one of the biggest things I do for self-care is if I don't want to do anything, I just don't.
Mm,
I
I
just
love
don't.
that.
Like,
Yeah.
you're an adult, right? And I'm like, I really should do laundry. Well, I'm just not going to. Not today. And I think we just have to listen to if we need to shut the computer off, like not answer that email. So some of the self-care is I can get something that I can see that's going to bring me stress and decide at that moment to
Mm,
not deal with it at that moment.
Mhm.
Because it still has to be dealt with. But to just kind of assess myself and say, am I emotionally ready to
mm.
handle this situation? Now, some situations, of course, come at you and it's just walking through the door and there's nothing you can do.
Mhm.
But even in those situations, you all, I will my tell, and I'm giving away the secret, is I usually offer people a bottle of water because and then I offer them a seat. I was like, "Would you like a bottle of water? Would you like to have a seat?" And they're like, "Wait." It's like they have to like figure out what's going. It's like it's
Right.
like
Yeah.
it's like it's like sleight of hand magic. Like,
They're like,
and
what did I miss?
they're like, "Sure, I'll take a bottle of water," because now you take control over the situation.
Exactly. No, I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you calm them. And so some people may offer, a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or something like that, but that's usually what I do. And then I ask them to have a seat. And then we're able to be kind of on the same playing field, if you will. It works every time. I promise you. It works every time. But that's a little self-care because I'm like, oh man, what am I gonna do? They look really, really angry walking down the hall.
No, that's smart. But your trips
you
sound
know.
fun too.
Oh yes. I
Yeah.
mean, nonstop laughter, just freedom, you know, to just be a full human and not have all those responsibilities just for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
think that's
that's
part of it too. Like you said, yeah, you get to just leave all, even your life responsibility for just a little bit and just totally relax and recharge. And yeah,
hmm
there's an old saying that, that's cheaper than a hospital bill,
it sure
by,
is.
not
It
taking the
sure is.
time.
Yeah. And I think we do ourselves a disservice because it's that rise and grind mentality. I do more in 24 hours than most people do in 3 days. And I mean, that's not serving anyone well.
Mm-mm,
That
no.
that is a
Mhm.
heart attack waiting to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I try to be very mindful if I don't want to do something. It's okay that no is a full sentence, and sometimes I just can't do it.
That's right. Yeah, I love that. I agree. That's so true. All right, so here's the hardest question you're going to get.
Okay, let's
So,
bring it home.
this is called Lattes and Leaders. So, what is your
Mhm.
favorite beverage of choice? Is it coffee, latte, cappuccino, espresso, or something totally different?
I am a tea drinker, and so I love a chai tea, or
Oh, yeah.
something with a little spice in it. And so that's usually, I'm a tea drinker. I really do enjoy a nice glass of herbal tea. Any I really love something that is has a story behind it. Where is it from, or a different, a region of the world, area of the world, or something, because usually, tea tells a story. And so I
Mhm.
really do enjoy a wonderful glass of tea.
Okay. All right.
So, do you have any last nuggets of wisdom you want to leave with the listeners?
And what I can say is, you don't have to have all the answers.
Mm.
There Give yourself time to pause and reflect. As leaders, there's so many. Everyone has a their own opinion of what you should do and how you should be as a leader. Everyone has an opinion.
Mhm.
And the only person that you really need to make proud is yourself. Are you proud of the decision that you made? Can you look at yourself in the mirror, even when it's a difficult one? Because I was saying this the other day to someone. I said the hardest part of my job is when I have to have courageous conversations with people.
Mm.
And because I know it's either going to make them feel empowered or inspired, or it has the potential to harm them, for them to feel harmed, even if it's not your intention, but it
Right.
still has the potential for that person to feel harmed by you, or to not feel good about themselves. And so I
Mhm.
always try to tell leaders to say, is it important for you to say that right now? Or is it something that you maybe be able to say tomorrow? You know, because it
Mhm.
depends. It really,
Yeah.
really depends, because your words have so much power, and you cannot take them back. So really, I think that that's my biggest the biggest takeaway I want for people to think about is thinking about your impact and your influence, and treating people with care. Even
Oh, I love
even
that. Love that.
treating people with care, and be always be kinder than what people sometimes even deserve.
Mm. Oh, yeah. That's tough, but so true.
Well, yeah, it is tough.
Mhm.
It is tough. It
Oh,
is it
that's
is
wonderful.
very tough. And so yeah, and that usually it works. I mean, and sometimes, I mean, I've been harmed by people, either, emotionally harmed, but at some point you cannot reciprocate that harm. Like, you can't, that's not helpful,
Right.
so, but thinking about that, your influence and your impact.
Mm. Yeah,
Mm.
that's wonderful.
Well, we have just really appreciated talking to you today, and you've had some wonderful insights
Mm.
that we really appreciate, and I feel like we're pretty like-minded on just a lot of things, and it's just a pleasure this morning.
Oh, thank you so much. I It was a privilege to be in community with you and to share this space and this time.
Oh,
So thank you
absolutely.
very much for thinking of me.
Thank you so much for taking time. Yeah, I loved your story, and just the wisdom that you've collected is just important for leaders to understand, especially people new to leadership. And so I think this will be a wonderful podcast for them to take notes from, and maybe realign their vision as they go forward too. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guests, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.